My name is Natalia Antlava. I'm one of the co-founders of Zeg. I also run Coda Story. And I abused my power. The last two sessions, I asked the question, and I'm abusing it once again. I have inserted myself into this session. I know you were expecting Armando Iannucci and Christopher Wylie. The good news, they're still here. And they will be joining me on stage. So Chris, Armando, could you please come up? Why don't you go there and Armando in the middle? Yeah, thank you so much. We're really doing it for gender balance. It's the optics. So I don't think either of you needs much of an introduction. Certainly not you, Armando, but also Chris. We heard.
You can massage our ego. Is this on? Yeah. You can massage our egos a little bit.
Yeah, you can massage. Yes, there will be plenty of that, I think. Okay. Oh, gosh, see, this is why I have to be here, because I can't trust them with anything. Oh, Jesus.
I'm sorry.
Before you start breaking the furniture. So we have been incredibly lucky to be able to call both Armando, who has long been a hero of mine, watched all the movies, and sent him a cold email a few years ago, and basically begged him to come to Georgia, where everyone has seen The Death of Stalin several times, but loves all of your other shows. So both Armando and Chris, who we have worked with on the podcast that Isabel told you about, who you should all listen to. It is on Audible. It's called Captured, but it's captured on the Audible platform. Bit of irony. But you can download the free trial and listen to it. It's worth it. Chris, through that process in the last few years, has become a friend and an incredibly important thought partner. And I am so honored that both of you really have been Zeg veterans. And as you know, when we do this in Tbilisi, where Zeg originated, the setting is very different. Last night, I sent my husband a picture during the rehearsal, and he said, I didn't realize we were doing Zeg in the Kremlin.
That's something to aim for, isn't it, really?
Yes, that is the plan, obviously.
Yeah. We sent some drones in with...
That's right. That's where we're headed. That's the destination. Oh, my God. I shouldn't be saying that. Russian spies everywhere. But, a lot of the... So you know how we roll during these conversations. You've done this before. But today, throughout the day, and I'm hoping this will be, kind of a little bit of a summative session. And I do want to bring you guys in as soon as possible. So if some of our amazing volunteers could be ready with the mic and raise hands so that I can, when you want to ask something, so that I can, get you into the conversation. But through the day, and especially this morning, so much of the conversations kept coming back to the theme of resistance, which seems to be on many people's minds as we all try to figure out how to navigate this ever-shifting world. Everyone in this room through the day heard, colonialism and the oligarchs and the AI and the algorithms and heavy stuff. So the question I'm hoping this session you will answer is whether at least some of the answer lies in creativity. Someone earlier today, said, it's a famous quote, culture shapes politics. Politics does not shape culture. So Chris, starting with you, do you think creativity can save us?
I think it would be helpful also to take a step back and kind of look at how the current world and culture and technology is sort of interfacing with each other so that we can also identify like if we're talking about rescue or resistance, from what. I think that the first point to say is that the primary medium of culture now is technology. And so I don't think that we can separate creativity or culture from technology, because you listen to your music on a tech platform, you watch movies on a tech platform, you shop for your clothes on a tech platform. Like, everything is on your phone. Everything's mediated by digital technology now. But I think one of the things that has done to our culture more widely is that it has both atomized and also desynchronized the way we participate in culture. So if I was to give you an example with TV shows, for example, that, in the olden days, if I can use that term, 70s, 80s, 90s, I'm technically an 80s child, okay? I can say that.
That's just the recent past.
So just recently, if you were to watch like a sitcom, right? There'd be a scheduled time on a scheduled channel, and you would sit down and you'd watch it at that time. And even if you were doing it alone in your living room, everyone else across the country is doing it at the same time that you're doing it, which means that you're watching something, even if you're on your own, in a collective way together. And then the next day you can talk at the office in the water cooler or whatever, like, oh, did you see what happened? Oh my God, that plot twist, can you believe it? There's a shared cultural moment, right? So in that sense, you're synchronizing people. That's a big part of like human culture. We're doing things together. But when you look at like a tech platform and how it sort of affects that, now no one watches stuff together. You can watch it whenever you want. You can watch it 2 years later. You can watch it right now. And you're not participating together. There's not these moments. Even when you go to things together, like I was at a Lady Gaga concert, and what was everybody doing? With their phone, recording it so that they can share it later, right? Even when we're together, we're no longer synchronized. And when you atomize people and you remove that synchronization, you kind of destroy a bit of what it means to have a collective culture. And also when you look at sort of, I think, the effects of that with Gen Z, for example, right? That there's sort of like a loss of meaning, a loss of sort of tethered meaning with a lot of things now. When you look at music movements in the past, like punk, right? If you were in the 80s and you hated Thatcher and you wanted to be a punk, you had to go meet punks. And if you wanted to dress like a punk, you had to hang out with punks. If you wanted to listen to that music, you'd have to talk to people who knew about it. Now that doesn't really happen. I think the loss of subcultures within the newer generations is a byproduct of this atomization. But then that also means that like the cultural products, whether it's the music or the fashion or media or whatever, also loses that meaning. And if you lose that common meaning and everything just becomes sort of this superficial aesthetic, it's just a vibe, right? It also means that you're having people that aren't like deeply connecting to like us as a society and reacting to that. And so I think like that to me is a big problem. And technology is both helping us create culture, but is also removing some really important social aspects of it, which really concerns me. I'll stop there.
Picking up on that then, I think it's great that I first became aware of how a way of looking at culture changed probably about 10 years ago when my son, who was into comedy, and he was about 14 at the time, came up to me and said, "Dad, you've got to go on YouTube. There's this amazing, funny group of people, you'll like them. They're called Monty Python's Flying Circus." And I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And that kind of gave me some hope. But listen to you, Chris, I was just wondering whether actually I know it's rather old-fashioned and British would say things go in cycles, but I just wonder whether actually we're reaching a stage now where some of those old points you were talking about the, the commonality, people watching the same thing at the same time, are beginning to form again. Not people watching the same thing at exactly the same moment, but people talking about something in the same week. That certain things pop up on Netflix, or the celebrity traitors on the BBC at the moment, or certain series that pop up on Netflix. Everyone, the words adolescence, for example, the word spreads fast, and therefore people join in to experience that. People don't want to feel left out of the conversation.
Yeah, that's where I have a little bit of an issue with Chris's argument, because you say we're all atomized, but at the same time, we do all watch all these shows and follow the same people on a scale much greater than we used to before.
I sort of agree with an awful lot of what you're saying. I just think maybe we're just beginning to see the first signs of that phase having passed. YouTube is now, working a bit more like a standard broadcaster in terms of commissioning programs and having a set time to put them on. Even Netflix launches their shows at a set time of day.
Is your next show going to be on Netflix?
It's something like 8 a.m. or something, because it just hits all the time zones at the right time or something. I just wonder whether we're actually, hopefully, just reasserting our sense of wanting to share and want to be part of something bigger than ourselves, that we can, something more communal. And an awful lot of the conversations that have been happening today, when people have been asked, tell us something positive, it's all got down to community. Now, whether it's against, switch off this and read a book, or in terms of politics, talk to your members of parliament, talk to people. That sense of coming back to get out of your bedroom in which you spend all your days looking at a screen, and actually engage with the real world. That's the first signs I've seen. And the thing I cling on to in terms of optimism about where we're going, a lot of the AI and a lot of the talk about the oligarchs, the broligarchs, is that
Broligarchs.
Whatever the data-garchs. Those.
It's the new one.
Yeah, they are children, but they are dangerous. But they and Trump and the abuse of language is all about trying to foist a different reality on us. But the thing is, the real world is still there, and they can't pretend it's not. And ultimately, real things will get noticed.
Well, is it? Do you think that will get noticed? And I should have done this in my introduction, but Chris, in addition to being a data scientist and whistleblower and an author, and a lawyer, and many other things, he also works in fashion and with fashion trends, which one of the reasons why we thought it would be a really interesting conversation. So, Chris, do you agree with Armando?
I think that there should be a distinction made between noise and building foundations of community or meaning together. So yes, there's lots of people talking about stuff, but it's all ephemeral, right? I can't really point to any kinds of community forming around those conversations or a subculture that's definitive, right? In the same way that I could point in the 80s and say there were punks, right? Or there was hippies in the 60s, that there was a counterculture movement that revolved around a collection of cultural mediums and music and fashion and looks. And I think that the last true subculture that we had of millennials was like the Harry Potter kind of, but that was all based on fantasy. It wasn't based on like a common value set. And then we've sort of lost that. Like even when you look at like fashion, for example, now when you look at how fashion trends emerge and then disappear, it is just ephemeral looks and aesthetics without any kind of connection to like an enduring community, right? If a trend like coastal grandma on TikTok is just, teenage girls wearing frumpy sweaters. There's no meaning behind it. It's just like a vibe and then it goes on. And I think that when you look at how the younger generations, Gen Z in particular, is hyper-ironic, the sort of memification of everything, how you can't take things seriously anymore, which goes through everything from celebrity to fashion to also to politics. It's a loss of meaning, and it's a loss of community, and I think that the biggest intermediating factor that's different from today than 30 years ago is the internet.
The olden days.
And in the olden days, back in the day.
When it was, when the internet was in black and white.
Yeah.
And, yeah. No, I mean, don't. It's always the trend of anything online to push two people into extremes, and I'm not 100% optimistic. If 6 months ago, a year ago, I would have been saying something very different. I would have been in a complete depth of depression as to what was happening. But I am seeing these signs of... the thing that gave me hope was something the comedian Sarah Pascoe told me when she met Nigel Farage at some event, some political event. This was during the Brexit discussions. And she thought, and she was in a room with him prior to going on to do the whatever it was, the debate or whatever. She thought she'd go up and say hello, and she went up to Nigel Farage and said, "I know who you are. I'm Sarah Pascoe. I'm a comedian." And Farage says, "I don't find comedy funny." And I thought, there's his weakness, you see. It's you know, you can tell an instinctive autocrat by the fact that they hate jokes, mostly jokes about themselves. They cannot stand. And, you know, if we are going to, you know, fight against the brogarchy or whatever it's called, reminding everyone that they are stupid human beings is at least the first step I would recommend.
I think you had something.
So I have a small, this is a slight tangent, but an encounter with Nigel Farage, and he really doesn't have a sense of humor.
Good.
I was walking past a pub in Westminster, and I was like, that guy looks like Nigel Farage. Oh, it is Nigel Farage. And I went up and we were chatting a bit, and then I asked him a question. I said, "I'm really curious if you believe in like Britishness, why you pronounce your name Farage and not Farage?" And he told me to F off.
Yes.
Did you just give Armando a line for the new script that he's clearly working on?
No. But they also, yes, they don't like not even tough questions. They don't
No,
like
that wasn't
questions.
even a tough question. That was a joke, and he didn't get it.
They don't like questions. That's the other thing. So it's for me, it's about, you know, if how do you tackle things like Farage and so on? It is like find their weak points. Find what are the things they run away from. You know, you persist with those. Irritate them. Even that is like. He would consider you on borderline criminal for asking him that question.
I was overstepping my mark there.
Yeah. For someone who talks about freedom of speech, and you know, someone can post online about burning down hotels that have asylum seekers, and she's espoused as a freedom of speech martyr. But if someone on TikTok goes bop bop bop, then oh my God, he's out to kill me. You know, it's an inability to see the two-tier system of values that they employ.
But do you feel that you have do you ever worry that the space where you can make fun of them is shrinking?
No, that's a good point, because as you were saying, that most culture is digital now. We're reliant on getting our stuff on, like for me, if I'm doing television or film, most of the studios, quite a lot of the independents, quite a lot of the streamers are owned by the garks. And so it's how do you get content on that is critical but is allowed. And I think that's a bigger factor. People, you know, I know talking about maybe doing a Trump project or a comedy about Trump, you know, I've already heard mostly American-based companies go, well, you could do, if you want what comes with it. What do you mean what comes with it? Well, just the pushback and it's a very real there is a very real air of not just caution, but I think fear in certain quarters about what should be made and what shouldn't be made. But the great plus, the great positive of the internet is there will be other ways of getting stuff out there. You know, that's, you know, the bad side of the internet is everything is available. The good side is everything is available. So there should come up, you should be able to get what you want to say out there.
Well, but it's that sort of freedom is breaking down. I mean, look at what's happened in this country where they're paywalling everything, or age gating, where you have to do like a biometric scan of your face in order to look at, like, go on Reddit. If you go on Reddit, you can't look at any of Reddit without scanning your face. So I think like that notion of the internet, that sort of like optimistic view of like this is going to connect people, it's very like 90s, and
no,
it's not like what governments are doing, because I
say again, I'm not a radical optimist. I'm cautiously pessimistic, which is, you know, as near as I can be to optimism. But I just see the first little shoots of possibilities there. But it's going to require a tremendous effort and commitment and resolve to make them more than that, I think.
Just a very quick, for both of you, I'm curious with you, Armando, whether it, you know, with so much, and I'm sure this is a question you're asked all the time, when reality is more absurd than some of the absurdities that happen in satire. Like, do you ever find yourself, you know, in the deficit of inspiration? And then I wanted to ask Chris, what story would you want Armando to be telling now?
Then what you do is, if reality of, you know, what Trump says or what Mark Zuckerberg says is far stupider or crazier than fiction, you point it out. I think that's what I do a podcast every week called Strong Message Here, where we just take a phrase that's been used that week in politics and examine what's going on underneath, because I think it's important that these people want to be unquestioned. They push back against criticism. They don't like jokes. They just want a platform where they will be, you know, unmolested and allowed to say. So what we have to do is start analyzing what they say and point out the inconsistencies. When Mark Zuckerberg, as soon as Trump got in, when Mark Zuckerberg said, we've had too much government interference in the past, the Biden administration telling us what to say about COVID. That's got to go. We're getting rid of fact-checking. We have to be free and independent. And so we will be working hand in hand with the Trump administration. You just thought, okay, well, you've just completely contradicted what you've just said about being free from government influence. You've just admitted that you want to partner with a government. So, but what struck me is that the media wasn't pointing that out. So it befalls to, you know, people like us, maybe humorists or writers or whatever, to pick on the linguistic and the logical and the political flaws in what they're actually saying and point those out.
Okay, so
I've never reduced a room to silence before.
Yeah, well, we can just sit there for the next one.
Yeah.
your question was what I think
Yeah.
he should make.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting that Armando is basically saying that he's...
I was chatting with Natalia before, and I was like, I wish you would make... So, for context, and I'm not sure if I told you this, when I was growing up, like when I was a teenager, The Thick of It was my favorite show.
Oh, right, okay.
Like, literally my favorite show. Like,
so
like meeting you, it was like kind of wild in my head. Like if I could go back and tell like 15-year-old Chris, like, oh my God, you're going to meet the guy that actually made this show. But I then later started working in British politics. Unfortunately for Nick Clegg and in the coalition, we all have our mistakes. But the thing that I learned working in British politics was I then rewatched The Thick of It and just how brutally accurate it actually is, like down to like the sandwich shop that they're in, having the
Yes.
like that's where the labor staffers go. Like it's literally like, and I think it was so funny because at the time you're poking fun at who's in power and Blair and all of that, and who's in power now. It's like it's big tech, it's all these big characters, and I wish there was like a thick of it
thing about them
for these tech bros, but also for like MAGA. I mean, the stories kind of write themselves. They're just mad people.
Well, yeah, I mean, so on the thing, I mentioned, you just tell reality. Think of it was based on a lot of research and just asking people the boring questions like, what time does the minister get in? What are the key members of the staff? What are the irritating points of the day that, and gradually you build up a sense of the reality of into which you put your stupid stories. And somebody, it was a government minister who came who said, he was talking about the accuracy of the thick of it then, saying the only thing that the thick of it didn't get right was there isn't a scene in which somebody says, this is just like something out of the thick of it. And similarly with Veep, we did all that. I think you're right. I think we just have to do proper investigative journalism to find out what really is going on inside the offices of Meta.
But we need to mock them. That's what's so powerful about what you made. Is that
I'm just reading this book, Sarah Wynne Williams' book, The Careless People, about her working for Meta and then leaving. Talking about how Mark Zuckerberg would just go to, I can't even remember which country he was in. He just said, hey, is there any way we could go and visit a riot? And everyone was going, what do you mean a riot? Oh, just a riot. I mean, there's so many riots here. Can we just go and see one? Not a big one, just like a mild riot.
Or can we provoke one on our platform?
And all his staff are going, well, he wants a mild riot. Well, who's going to, I don't know. And bizarrely, they ended up in a mild riot. Or he wanted, the whole trip had been set up to speak to the president of, let's say, Brazil. I think I've got the country wrong, but let's say Brazil. But there was a big conference happening there, and after months of trying to set it up, they'd got 15 minutes with the president of Brazil at 2 o'clock, and then suddenly Obama, who was still president then, says, oh, does Mark Zuckerberg want to meet me at 1:45? And they thought, right, okay, he's speaking to President Obama at 1:45, but he has got this meeting at 2. So at 2 o'clock, someone's going, you know that room that just has Mark Zuckerberg and Barack Obama in it? Could you go in and tell Mark Zuckerberg he has to leave now? And again, there was well, I'm not going to do it. You go in. No, you go in. No, and somebody had to go in and just interrupt President Obama and go, I'm so sorry, but he's got something else now. And it's just that kind of, I think people should know that that's what
this is a show.
I know.
I hope you realize it's a show and you need to make it.
But who will fund it? That's the thing. I think we have to crowdfund
Well, that's right.
it, really.
Who will fund it?
I think we have to crowdfund it, really.
Well, we can start with a couple of hundred people in this room.
I just saw, the talk earlier, which from the podcast, the Capture podcast, about these guys in Silicon Valley who want to live to 150. So I just instantly saw what's that world going to be like in 150 years? When it's global warming has taken its toll, and it's just a sunburnt wilderness, and there are these like 25, 100-year-old oligarchs left. And what is that world going to look like? I'd like to see that. Not as a show. I would just like to see that.
You better start.
That's why you got to do the longevity, so you live long enough to see it.
Yeah, you better start taking those supplements. Yeah. Can I get a sense of the hands? Do we have questions? Okay, we've got one in the back. Can we take a couple of? We've got one here and one in the back. Let's take them back to back, and then 2 more. Can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, is it on? Yes.
We can't see anything from
hello,
the stage.
hello. My name's Lawrence. I'm a dad. And I must admit, I'm constantly surprised that my children's generation seem to have forgotten how to riot.
To riot or to write?
To riot.
Riot,
It's
okay.
just since you mentioned it.
Oh, we don't riot here. The closest we've come to a riot was after Diana died, and we asked that the flag be lowered outside Buckingham Palace. That was the closest we've come to a national revolution here.
things that bother me, this is a question on behalf of the younger generation, in actual fact, and what things that bother me are when I see polling in this country that says things like a majority of young people would prefer a benign dictatorship to what we have now, or when I see that young people seem to be able to absorb the idea of the government telling them that they're going to be described as a terrorist for having a political opinion about something. This sort of retreat from politics that young people seem to have is obviously potentially catastrophic, given what people have been saying all day about, you know, the bad guys winning and things. And it just strikes me, because I work in schools a bit, that one thing that we can still control, I think, is what we choose our children to learn in school, right? And I wonder if you have any thoughts about whether you think the education system in countries like this are actually fit for purpose, or whether, for instance, that it might be less of a good idea for us to learn things about the Lutheran Reformation in history and things that perhaps are a bit more relevant to them, or whether things like compulsory courses in technology and ethics might be a sensible thing for 16-year-olds to get their heads around.
There is, I mean, talk of the voting age being lowered to 16, so therefore there's a whole new generation going to be engaged in politics. My hope is that that therefore means that accompanying that will be more discussion in school about how democracy works. Because I think a lot of people, I've seen those surveys, people saying they like the idea of benevolent dictatorship, but it's one of those abstract things when you just say democracy. You have to break it up and explain what democracy is, and I don't think we've been very good at that. I think we've just assumed that by saying the word democracy or freedom or whatever, people just understand. But once you actually break it down into parts like, you know, do you like the idea of a government having absolute power so it could do things that you don't like? Well, of course they'd do that. You know, somebody did an argument about it to counter this whole climate change is just a green hoax. To counter that, why don't you break it down into the practicalities of, okay, what is your solution to the flooding problem? What is your solution to the wildfires problem? You know, it's that thing I was saying earlier, reality is still there. You know, you have to remind people of reality. So I think a lot of work needs to be done into explaining to people just what the realities of democracy are and what they would be if they were taken away. That has to be done, I think. I'm sure the answer to the question, would you like a benevolent dictatorship, would be very different after 3 or 4 years of one.
Chris, that question actually made me think of the conversation that we had where you were talking about Gen Z and being ironic. Can you explain that?
So when you take so Gen Z is the first generation that really has like grown up like entirely in the gaze of an algorithm. And they've also grown up in public. So and this is one of the things that makes, where there's a significant differentiation between millennials, if you want to call them that, and Gen Z, is that Gen Z, from being a child, has stuff posted, people talking to them, and so they've lived their private lives all through their adolescence and now young adulthood in public. And so I also, in my corporate job, I do like focus groups is one of the things that we do. And when you talk to Gen Zs about millennials, they always say millennials are like so cringe, because when you look at, 10, 15 years ago, when millennials were sort of at the height of their cultural prowess, everything was sincere. Like there was this sort of like millennial sincerity, like we're going to do good, Obama's president, like, tech was still optimistic, startups were cool. And that's in part because when you look at when Instagram came about and social media, it's at sort of the late adolescence or early adulthood. So they didn't grow up being bullied at school because of something on Instagram. But with Gen Z, their entire sort of brain has been wired differently. Everything is in public. And so if you make a mistake, everyone sees that and catches it, right? And then we also have this sort of culture, this sort of gotcha culture. If you don't say something perfectly, if you post something that's not perfect or whatever, people pile on, they dox you, whatever. And so if you grow up in that context, you can't take anything seriously. And you can't be serious yourself, because if you show that you're seriously trying to do something and then you fail, you get attacked, the internet attacks you. And so you have a generation that can't embrace anything serious, because to do that means that there's personal risk and jeopardy in doing that. And so everything becomes hyper-ironic. This is how you get the memification of everything. Everything is just a joke. I wasn't serious when I said that. I wasn't serious when I wore that. I wasn't serious when I did that. And so if you live your life that, and then you have an entire generation that lives like that, the sort of impact on culture is that nothing is serious anymore. We shouldn't be serious. We can't be serious. If you're serious, it's cringe. You're a millennial.
And it's sort of filtering now into the next generation of politicians as well. So, for example, you can get J.D. Vance saying, those people saying, I like Hitler, I love Nazis. That's just boy talk,
Well, but if you look at J.D. Vance as an example within alt-right Gen Z media, one of the things that I find really interesting that's sort of happening now in this administration is that they are curating online characters. So have you seen like the sort of fat, pudgy J.D. Vance? Do you guys, know what I'm talking about? Yeah. They're cultivating this, that J.D. Vance is like he's both an actual person, but then he also exists online as a character. And that there's this sort of weird blending. It's very postmodern, where you're both a cartoonish caricature and you're the actual guy. But what's really interesting about it is that they start to contextualize real world events with fantasy. And it's like a very deliberate thing. So when Charlie Kirk got assassinated, on alt-right media, within days, there were all these AI-generated cartoons or little clips of, they now call him the Kirkinator. So it's a half animatronic sort of robot, where his face was blown off. They made it a robot. And then the other half is Charlie Kirk. And Elon, in this sort of narrative, Elon got his scientists to revive him and turn him into a robot. He also flies. And he goes and meets pudgy J.D. Vance, and they go and fly into Valhalla, the Norse god. But this is also, that's important because that's where Kash Patel, the FBI director, when he said, I'll see you in Valhalla, they then made an entire weird cartoon about it that just went viral on alt-right media, where people talk about Charlie Kirk, the Kirkinator, like he's not dead. And he's now a character with pudgy J.D. Vance and a white version of Kash Patel in Valhalla, where they're going around hunting and owning the libs.
I do think at one point the Supreme Court in America is going to say, give the vote to bots and memes and the Kirkinators of this world.
Next question. Yeah, we've got a question in the middle of the room here. There was another one towards the,
Stephen Whittle is my name. Peter Thiel is looking for the Antichrist. Who's your candidate?
I mean, I'm obsessed with Peter Thiel. Because he's the least public of all of them, isn't he? And the weirdest, and possibly the most powerful as well. And he's probably the cleverest, but he's also deeply dumb. He did a podcast or an interview about a month ago where when he was talking about the benefits of, I don't know, data, whatever. And the interviewer said, and ultimately, are you looking for, are you in favor of this being for the benefit of mankind? And he went, oh. There wasn't even a kind of course.
Oh, I think
And then
it
he
was
did that
worse
Peter
than
Thiel
that.
thing where he went,
No,
and then he
more
was
like, do you
glitching
want
because-
humans to exist?
Yes,
And
it was, yeah, it
people-
was much more fundamental,
and
wasn't
it literally looked like he was channeling Lucifer,
Yeah.
like live on camera, because he was glitching. He was like,
No, I want you to die. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, it was extraordinary.
dude, the show writes itself.
Well, via AI, does it, or Grok, or whatever.
do it before AI does it.
I know. I'm so annoyed my initials
But you
are
haven't
AI.
answered the question,
Yeah.
and I think it's for both of you.
Yeah.
Sorry, was the question who is the Antichrist?
Yeah, who's
Christ.
yours? Yeah.
Well, for me, it's Teal, but yeah.
Oh, I mean,
Because he said, he tried to argue it was Greta Thunberg was the actual Antichrist. I don't quite follow his logic. But
they really hate Greta. I would say that my vote for Antichrist is AI itself. Because if you think about sort of the idea of like possession and sort of being haunted by spirits, dark spirits, these are all of the like machines that we've created, that we've put into our houses and into our pockets, that these things are watching us and thinking about us and tracking us and have intentions for us, and we can't see it, but it sees us all the time. And like, if you want something to happen, I mean, I was at like an influencer event, and there's this guy who's very big on TikTok, and he goes, sometimes I like pray that the algorithm is going to like help me, and I'm like, do you literally like you in your head you're wishing, please algorithm help me, and I find that really disturbing, because that's what people used to do, you know, in more religious times, and I think that's what we're going to sort of get. So my vote for the Antichrist is literally AI itself.
Although I was always cheered when you for some years now have been saying that the AI bubble is a bubble, is that, and it may well burst, in that the headlines that the Sam Altmans of this world say about how it's going to transform everything, it's going to be the answer to everything, they have to say that because they need the money. It's really a sales pitch. They don't know where it's going to go. It's probably not going to get much better.
I mean, they're pivoting to porn. Like, I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
But, like,
Everything
literally,
pivots to
Sam
porn.
Altman, he says, oh, actually, come December, we're pivoting to porn, and we're going to let ChatGPT, you can do what you want with ChatGPT.
Yeah. Like most things. it
When,
ends up-
like, 2 years ago, he was like, we're going to cure cancer, guys.
Yeah.
But you know, my issue with, and can I see the room? Do we have questions? One more, I'm being told. Do we have questions? Oh, we've got 1, 2, 3. You know what? Can you please keep them really brief? And can we take those 2 questions or 3 questions from the back of the room? Sorry, Matt, you just told me one more. Questions from the back of the room.
Hi.
We started
Hi.
a bit late, so yeah.
Hello, thanks for the great chat. I'm John. I'm kind of scared, like everyone, of the oligarchs or whatever they are. And I'm also scared of AI because I'm just not very good at it. And I just wondered, as a comedian, Armando, and as a data scientist, Christopher, like, have you found it to be useful in any way?
I enjoy having arguments with it. I mean, AI reminds me of like a quite good but not the ultimate winner of The Apprentice, a candidate there who's just a very good bullshitter, so very convincing, because 90% of what he's saying to you, or what AI is saying to you,
Because it has no shame.
It has no
Which is like,
no shame.
like brilliant if you're
Yeah.
a bullshitter.
I'll try and sub it down, but I just picked an argument with Grok, Elon Musk's thing, because somebody had put up a still from a film and said, what's this from? What film is this from? And Grok said, this clip is from The Death of Stalin, directed by Armando Iannucci. To which I said, bollocks, because it wasn't. I had no idea where the still came from. And Grok just picked up on me and just went, oh, happy to correct. So where is it from in the film? The director's cut. Fair play, still. What's the real story behind that scene? To which I said, no, I've just told you it's not in the film. And it said, no, you're being coy. to tell us, I'd love to get the record straight. Where is it from? And I said, it's a deleted scene from the film, a dream sequence in song. And Grok said, the elusive director's dream sequence. Now it all makes sense. At which I went, my pleasure. Regarding that, I doubt the scene will be in, since I made that question up. I made that answer up now. I've been lying to you, Grok. It's not in the film. Apologies. But you need to tell Mr. Musk he's spending tens of billions of dollars developing a gullible knobhead. To which Grob, ouch, fair hit. Gullible or not, I appreciate the creative trolling. Keeps me on my toes. If that's not the real scene. If that's not the real scene, care to share what it actually is? Always up for learning. I had to go again. No, I've just told you. It doesn't exist. It's not in the film. I don't know where this scene comes from. You keep saying it's in my film, and I keep saying it's not in my film. But I stopped doing it because I thought I probably destroyed the economy of about 5 countries just from the energy used to kind of have that discussion.
You're overheating the servers.
I know. But it's like an apprentice candidate who goes, yeah, I can give you the answer to that. You want me to sort out do your tax for you because you're busy. Okay, you owe the Inland Revenue £5. Thank you. And you then have to, and then you just assume that must be right. And before you know it, you've got another letter from the Inland Revenue, and you have to explain, I used AI to do my account. Well, we just assume, and that's what worries me about governments, like including the British government, just making AI the magic solution to all our problems. And if we gave the AI companies huge multi-billion contracts.
Meta in NHS.
Yes. Peter Thiel and his Palantir organization has all our medical data because the NHS has run off them, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, Labour signed off on it.
Yeah. That's good,
Chris,
isn't it?
you use AI all the time in your work?
Well, I mean, like, my day job is in AI, so I build AI. I'm not sure if the question is like, do I use ChatGPT? I don't. I find it really annoying. And I think something that I've learned over the years, especially like when I was like writing a book, is that like the painful process of like doing the work, like in writing that text or that email or the reports, or like forces you, that pain is like refining your thinking, and that like just like I would become dumb if I just got, Grok or whatever to do even if it was accurate. Like I don't want it to do that, because then like there's no point in me.
But that brings me back a little bit to the issue, the previous session. Yeah, go on.
But to be clear, I'm not against necessarily using it. Like if you find it helpful, like go for it. But I think like my concern, especially because I've talked to teachers who like talk about students who just like write their reports. They don't read the book. They just get the summary, and it's like they go through an entire degree where like what's the even point of going to university? You just like get a summary of everything. And then that's like the future workforce. But then it doesn't matter because they're going to be replaced by AI, so who knows? Like
so the issue with having this conversation, just like the one that we had before, is that I think it leaves most people feeling very powerless. And you feel like the expectation is then being put on you to do something. And I don't know, what am I supposed to do? And I'm sure there are many people in this room who do use AI or enjoy their, easier transport and enjoy a little bit less friction in there. We're addicted to no friction, but it's still, what do we do? There are people who like having the convenience of Kindle instead of carrying a paper book.
Yeah.
So, is it fair to put this responsibility on individuals?
No, it's not fair. And I am usually reluctant to tell people to not do something, abstain from something, or use a particular product, because I think one of the problems with the individualized framing of, like, if you want to go and use like privacy-centric tools or open source stuff or whatever, like go for. I'm like all in favor of that. But like, when we individualize the responsibility, it distracts us from the fact that there are companies that have created the system in the first place, and that the onus and our attention should be on them. It's the same like, one of the lessons of the environmental movement over the past couple of decades is that when you go and sort of shame people for not separating their recycling, you know, or you didn't take the bicycle to work, you use a car because you live in a suburb, like, well, you should live in a walkable neighborhood or whatever, that you turn people off, and that's like really not helpful if you're trying to like solve this like global issue. And I think like with AI, it's actually the same, that it's not like you should use, you know, privacy-centric tools is like you should be recycling. And like you should like go for it, do it. I'm not saying don't do it, but we should take a step back and go, no, if we're going to do anything, we all do have agency. We can go and shout at our members of parliament or our congressmen or whatever. We can go shout at them. We can go protest. We can write letters. We can do, like, it is a political issue. And so, like, the way I look at it is just treat it as such. You know, if you don't like that these are manipulative machines, yell at your member of Congress or your member of parliament and say, like, we need to regulate this wild industry so that we stop.
Well, you still can, right?
Well, before, like, you know, in order to talk to before your member of Congress is Grok or whatever, like, it's...
Yeah. And just to go back to the, you know, creativity, you know, AI, as we know, is all about, you know, best guessing based on past behavior. So all it has is past. It doesn't have future.
Because it's also not embodied. I think this is one of the things that people really forget because we anthropomorphize. Like, if I was to ban something, it would actually be using first-person language, AI using first-person language, because then we treat it as an intelligence when it's not. But it doesn't have embodied experience, and so it doesn't have memory. It doesn't. It lacks subjectivity, and so all of these things that require
it doesn't
like
have family,
a creative process. It lacks, like, it can't. It's just predictive. Do you remember like the old Nokia phones, like where you'd like type, you know, before like full keyboards back in the day?
Like,
Like, because
we're all,
I remember. Old. It's literally, it is like predictive text.
It's a very sophisticated predictive test. And you know what creativity does, what, you know, art or writing or whatever is, it comes up with something new. You know, and that's the best way of showing the limits of AI is by producing something new. AI, if you told AI, come up with a movie about the Barbie doll, I don't think it would match what they actually did come up with, because it took a couple of creative individuals to come up with something distinctive like that.
And also reflecting humanity back. That's like but you can't, if you're not human, you can't do that. No. And I think that's like something that's ever going to be in our preserve.
Unfortunately, we're out of time. And speaking of riots, I think there will be a riot if we don't get off stage. But there is one last segment to the evening, which we kind of segued into perfectly, talking about both Gen Z and forgetting how to riot. Well, I happen to come from a place where they haven't forgotten how to protest and riot. So for the very last act of this day, we have one more story for you from Georgia. So thank you so much, Armando Iannucci, Christopher Wylie, thank you so much.